So similar to my best TV video of 2024, I'm not going to do a traditional top 10 movies of the year video, but I'm just going to randomly talk about the 10 films that were my favorite films of 2024 in no particular order. 2024 was kind of a weird year for movies for me, where a lot of the stuff that ended up in my top 10 weren't really movies that I was excited for or looking forward to beforehand. And then they came out and I watched them and I was like, oh, that was actually really good. But I just remember going into the year not really too excited for any movies in particular. It just was kind of a year where I was like, a lot of my hype was more for movies that were coming out in 2025. Even at the start of 2024, I was like, well, a lot of the things I'm really looking forward to are coming out next year. I don't really care too much about a lot of the stuff coming out this year. I'll see them, but I'm not super hyped for them. Also, as per usual, I did not see every movie that came out this year. Obviously, there were actually a lot of big ones I missed out on. But there were a lot of big ones that I wasn't nearly into, as a lot of people. So they didn't end up on here because of that. Unlike other years, though, I actually saw a lot of films twice in cinema. I think this is the first year where I just saw a lot of random films twice because, I had time or whatever, and I was like, yeah, I'll see it again. Anyway, let's talk about my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. So the first film I'm going to talk about is one of the last films I saw this year, and it's a documentary, and it's Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. I was really looking forward to this film, but it was very, very, very hard to see in Ireland. They didn't really give it a wide release at all. I think like one or two cinemas in the entire country got it for like a day or something like that. So I had to wait until it came out on digital last month before I could watch it. But the film is a documentary about Christopher Reeve and his life before and after the accident that left him paralyzed, and it goes into how he and the people around him dealt with that and how he helped set up the Christopher Reeve Foundation and all that sort of stuff, and just to help other people with injuries and kind of the impact he had on a lot of people. It was a very emotional film, mostly framed through present day interviews from Christopher's family and friends, as well as a lot of older footage and older interviews with various people, including himself. Growing up being a huge fan of the original four Superman films, those films, along with Smallville, really were my entry into superheroes as a whole, and they're a reason why Superman is my favorite fictional character of all time, based off of those movies and based off of Smallville. So Christopher Reeve was kind of one of my favorite actors. Like, even growing up, I was always really excited. I think he plays the best version of the Clark Superman dynamic. Like, I think his acting of how he changes from Clark into Superman and Superman back into Clark is something that none of the other actors have been able to touch yet, as good as so many of them have been. I think when it comes to that particular thing, he's still the peak of what the Superman Clark Kent sort of thing looks like. So that, for that reason alone, like, this film I had to see, and this documentary is really powerful and it's really worth a watch. Next up is surprisingly the only comic book film on this list. I feel like most years, a lot of my top 10 is made up of big comic book films that I really liked or I watched. But to be honest, 2024 was not a good year for comic book films. The best things about 2024 when it came to superheroes were in the TV shows, but the one movie that came out this year that was a comic book film that I was really happy with was Deadpool and Wolverine. It's one of the films I saw twice in cinema last year. I was cautious about this film for quite a while because, it's bringing Deadpool into the MCU and into the wider Marvel universe properly, as well as establishing certain Fox characters and universes in the respective timelines and places alongside the MCU. It felt like the film could completely fall flat if it wasn't played properly. And, there was a lot on it, like the weight of how much it had to deal with and juggle could have brought it down. But I thought it was a really, really fun time. It felt like a love letter to an era of Marvel and superhero films in general that is over now. But I think the film turned out really well, and while there are for sure a few minor issues with it, I don't really feel like any stuff was too much or any stuff was too bad in it. And to be honest, after watching it twice, I was like, okay, I couldn't see this a third time. Like, I feel like I've seen the film enough now for like a couple of years. Like, I don't have a need to revisit it until, I don't know, whenever Secret Wars is coming out. But that is going to happen with most films you see twice, so it's not a slight against the film. Next up is a film that really did surprise me a lot, just because I wasn't really a big fan or enamored with the first film, and that was Dune Part 2. Like, I know Dune Part 1 is a huge, I guess, darling for like Twitter and for like various movie places, but the first film never really did a lot for me. But I thought Part 2 was sort of insanely awesome, and probably my favorite cinema experience of the year. I think like it's a long film, but it didn't feel long. It flew by both times I saw it, because I saw it twice. and it just both times were like some of the most fun I was having in a cinema this year. Austin Butler was giving maybe the most interesting actor performance in a film in True Dune Part 2 last year, I thought. Timothée Chalamet was great. The music was fucking awesome. The visuals were cool as hell. Yeah, I was like, even after seeing it twice, I was like, I could go again. This is that good. Next up is one that I don't think will end up on a lot of people's lists, and I feel like this is sort of a controversial pick, but Civil War was one of the most interesting films I think I watched this year. I know it's a very politically charged film in America, but as a non-American, it wasn't really saying a lot or doing a lot that was making me uncomfortable or making me view it in that context. And I mean, I guess, the Civil War was meant to be that, so I feel like I'm probably losing a lot of the experience by not being American or something like that. But I just felt like the idea of following around these journalists during a civil war while some really fucked up shit is happening constantly around them was a really compelling idea and made for a compelling film. No spoilers, but I also really did appreciate that the film ends exactly when the plot is reached. Like, there is no wrap up, there is no scene at the end to wrap things up or go beyond the plot. Like, from the beginning of the film, the film tells you what one of the plot, like they tell you what one of the character's main goals are. And the film ends exactly when the character reaches that goal, which I thought was really interesting and something you don't see a lot of in films. There's always a couple scenes after the plot is reached where they're wrapping up something, and that's not a bad thing. But I thought it made Civil War stand out, where it was like the last frame pretty much of the film is that plot being reached, which was really interesting. Next up is one that really snuck up on me, and I wasn't intending on seeing it until the day I was in the cinema watching it, but it is The Substance. I've seen it end up on a lot of people's best of the year lists, but I'm really glad that I got to see this film early before the internet started really kind of getting onto it, because I went into it knowing it was sort of a horror film, but I went into it not knowing anything beyond that. And then, the week after I saw it, Twitter was posting entire clips, entire edits of it and stuff like that would have spoiled everything. But it was one of the times watching a film where I was like, okay, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is going on? And it kind of kept that up for the whole thing, where every time I sort of felt like I could maybe tell where the film is going, something would happen that would then be like, no, you don't know where the film is going. And it's also a film that has sort of stuck with me and actually improved the more I think about it. Like, I came out of it thinking, yeah, this was really interesting, but then the more I've thought about it, the more I've been like, oh yeah, this is absolutely one of the best films I saw last year. Next up is one of the few films that I actually was really excited for before the year started, and that is Furiosa. And to me, Mad Max Fury Road is easily one of the coolest films of the 2010s, and I feel like when all is said and done, Furiosa is going to end up being one of the coolest films of the 2020s. But what I love about this film is just the vibe and aesthetic of it. Like, there was just something so unique about it that kept making me think about it constantly for weeks after seeing it. The structure and the way the story is told is really interesting. Anya Taylor-Joy is fantastic in it, but Chris Hemsworth as the antagonist was sort of the highlight for me that really stuck with me. It's every line of dialogue he was reading was just so interesting, and just the way he was doing it and the way he was acting, it's like nothing I've seen before. And I think that's kind of what I loved about Furiosa, is that despite it being the fifth film in the Mad Max franchise, it felt like a film completely belonging to itself that didn't have much in common with any other film I can think of, like, ever. And that was so cool. It was another one I saw twice in cinema, and just like Dune, after seeing it, I was like, I mean, I could watch it again. Like, I could go see it again if I wanted to. Like, it's a great film. I really, really, really was happy with it. I'm surprised it's not ending up on more people's best of the year list, because I thought Furiosa just was it's just an interesting film. Like, I think it just hands down stands out above a lot of the films that came out last year. Okay, I know I've said a bunch of times about a film surprising me, but I 100% did not expect Alien Romulus to end up being on my best of the year list, because I'm not an Alien franchise fan. I love the Predator films, but like the Alien films, I watched all the Alien Predator films together for the first time, I think, in like my first year of college. So it would have been like 2019, 2018. But I like Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Covenant, Alien Prometheus, Resurrection. All the films, I've seen them all, and none of them have been anything special to me, unfortunately. And I pretty much just accepted that this is not a franchise for me. I'm glad a lot of people like it, but it's not my cup of tea. But for the trailers for Romulus, they were really, really, really good, and they kept, making me go, I wouldn't mind seeing that. And then I watched the film, and I couldn't believe how into the film I actually was. It it was just a well put together horror film that kept me interested and kept me invested in it for the entire runtime. And I don't think it ever overstayed its welcome. I think right when I was getting to the okay, maybe we could wrap this up, the film started to wrap things up. And yeah, I was just happy with it. Next up is another film that, just like Furiosa, I'm really surprised hasn't ended up on more people's best of the year lists, especially because it seems like Twitter is obsessed with this film and Letterboxd is obsessed with this film. But in general, I really liked Challengers. Also saw it twice. I think maybe 2 times was enough. This is kind of similar to Deadpool Wolverine, where after 2 times I was like, I don't really have much of a want or need to see this film again. But it was a really good film. The editing in this film is my favorite editing of any film of the year. The final 5 minutes is probably my actual favorite movie scene of the year. I thought it was great. The whole way that it wraps up and the whole way everything finishes was like, I was like, yeah, that's really exciting, really intense. The highlight of the film for me, though, was the score. I thought the music was fantastic and just enhanced every single aspect of the film. But yeah, Challengers was really good. I think this next one was maybe the final 2024 film I got to see, but Anora was really good. Another film that kind of snuck up on me, and then the internet was talking about it so much that I was like, okay, this sounds like it's a must watch. And to be honest, the first hour wasn't doing it for me. I remember after the first hour, I was like, okay, I can kind of see where the film's going, and I'm not really too interested in it. It's probably not going to be a film that I end up like loving or anything like that. But then after the first hour, the film completely changed and the story completely changed and everything, like the tone changed and everything was immediately more interesting to me and was grabbing me and bringing me into the film much more from that point on. Like I think this is at the very end of my top 10 list just because the first hour didn't do much for me, but overall I think that at the end of the day, yeah, like I was really into the film. Finally, I'm going to mention Sing Sing, which this was one film on the list that I hadn't heard about at all, hadn't seen anything about, and then one of my friends had it at the very top of his best of the year list. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to check this one out and not let it go by. Coleman Domingo is one of the best actors around at the moment, and they gave him a lot of great material to work with. Just, he plays an actor in the film, so he's he has to pretend. He has to make himself look like he's acting, even though he's already acting. I don't know. It was really good. He was really good. He was acting his ass off in the film, and I also really liked the ending and the outcome for the characters. I think the final 5 minutes is up there with Challengers as my maybe favorite ending of the year in terms of films. So yeah, it was really good. But those are my top 10 favorite films of 2024. Really happy I got to actually make a video like this year because I've been meaning to do something like this since I started making videos. But just have always been sort of busy in late December. That would keep me from being able to make this sort of video. But how did your top films of 2024 list shake out? Is there much overlap between mine and yours? Let me know. If you want to check out my top 10 TV show videos, I have that up, as well as my top 5 most disappointing TV shows of 2024. And then tomorrow I'm going to have up my top 5 most disappointing movies of 2024, which that one was a little hard to put together because, like I said, there wasn't a lot of movies I was excited for before the year came out. So it was hard to be super disappointed in a lot of movies when I didn't have much stake in them to begin with. But I found 5 that I'm pretty comfortable saying disappointed me. Then there's going to be, followed up by that, there's going to be like what I want to see in 2025 from TV and what I want to see in 2025 from movies. So make sure to look out for those. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, maybe like, share, subscribe. It's always a huge help. Thank you and have an amazing day.